So this episode is an absolute must listen for all parents. I don't think I've ever met a parent who hasn't at some point struggled with a newborn or a child who's having some difficulties with the concept of sleep. You need sleep and your child also needs sleep, and it's essential to health. However, so many of us are lacking in it. I'm so delighted to be chatting with Tori, who is a fully qualified infant sleep consultant, specialising from newborns up to 5 years. Mummy to Freddie, who is nearly 3, and Matilda, who has just turned 1. Tori has learned firsthand how amazing but incredibly overwhelming this parenting journey is. Tori is also a member of the International Paediatric Sleep Association and has somehow also found time to train as a maternity practitioner, a baby massage instructor, and is the founder of This Parent Can, which offers a range of parenting packages to help build skills for some of the more challenging aspects of being a parent. Tori's approach as a baby sleep consultant is to provide parents with all the knowledge and confidence they need to be able to teach their baby how to be an independent sleeper, a skill for life. By working this way, she doesn't swoop in and offer a band-aid solution. Instead, Tori ensures parents have the tools they need to help their little one sleep well throughout their infant years, into childhood and beyond. I have no doubt that some life-improving knowledge bombs are about to land. So Tori, good evening, and thank you so much for joining me today. I'm really excited for this chat, and I will definitely be taking some notes because I feel like your knowledge needs to be spread far and wide to help parents all over.
Oh, bless you. Well, thank you so much for having me, Pip. It's very nice to be on my first ever podcast.
Yeah, it's exciting. It's exciting. And it's been great getting to chat to different people like you. So it's brilliant. So I guess I'm kind of as intrigued, hopefully, as all of our listeners about this subject of how we can help improve sleep of everybody, because obviously by improving it for children, we're going to improve it for parents, which is a massive win all round.
Absolutely.
And when we think about kind of, I guess, sleep and routines around sleep, is there kind of an appropriate age that we should be kind of thinking about it? And is there kind of a amount of sleep in terms of hours that children should be getting, kind of judging by their ages?
So in terms of sort of creating a routine, I get asked this a lot, and when's the right age, when's the wrong age? And as I say to all my clients, and sort of every parent that I speak to, there is no right or wrong time. It's just got to sort of work for you, work for your little one, and work for your family dynamic. So if it worked for Gladys down the road, great. It doesn't necessarily mean it has to work for you. Saying that, if you did want to get into a routine, the earliest that you probably should look to start is around 6 weeks. So those first 6 weeks, so from sort of bringing baby home from the hospital, and then you've got those first 6 weeks of sort of brand new baby, brand new parents. And I think it's so important not to put any pressure on yourself. Take each day as it comes, get that skin on, watch as many Netflix programs as you can, establish feeding, however way that might be. And then if you think at 6 weeks, actually, feeding's going really well, baby's gaining weight really well, we're all fit and healthy, then that's when you can start look at sort of creating a good routine. And the way to do that at a really young age is looking at the bath and bedtime routine. So setting up a consistent, calm bath time. So you'd say you wanted your baby to be in bed by 7. So you'd go up for bath at 6. You'd make sure you do that every night at the same time. You'd have a lovely bath, calming but playful. Get them out of the bath, obviously dry them off, give them a baby massage. It doesn't have to be like an hour, just sort of a 10-minute tummy massage, just to get any of that trapped wind out. And help them sort of move things along. Then go into the room where they are going to be sleeping for the night, have that all set up in sort of nighttime mode, give them a full feed, and make sure that they're fully winded, because a baby, especially of that age, who is hungry or who has wind will not go to sleep. And then put them in their sleeping bag or in their swaddle, and then ideally put them to sleep. So that would be the earliest, but as I said, there's no right or wrong age to start whatsoever. So it's just so important that it works for you and your family dynamic.
If only babies were born knowing the difference between day and night, it'd be so much easier, wouldn't it?
Oh my God, I know.
We need to work on that.
Yeah, yeah. And that's another thing that you can start thinking about as parents of newborns, is sort of during the day, making sure that, you know, it's very light, there's lots of conversation happening, there's no hush voices, you know, lots of stimulation, sort of chatting during feeds, and then at night time, you know, obviously sometimes babies are sort of downstairs with us, but making sure that the lights are low, the TV volume's on low, it's very much sort of separating the two, so they get to understand that daytime is sort of awake time and nighttime is for sleeping, because they need to get that body clock in intact, don't they?
Yeah, for sure. That's really good advice, actually, Tori, because when you talk about kind of night mode for the room that the baby's going to be sleeping in, so that kind of, I guess, quieter noise, and the lighting that you spoke about, is there anything else that kind of you've found in your experience that kind of helps set that kind of scene and that differential from kind of daytime?
Yeah, so having sort of, as I said, set a night mode, so as dark as possible. So our sleep hormones, they're called melatonin, and melatonin basically needs darkness to thrive. So we want, you know, newborn up, baby's room to be as dark as possible. Also, some babies love to be swaddled, so swaddling them, I'm a massive fan of a company called Love to Dream. This is no way an ad, but because some parents get a bit nervous around swaddling, so this is basically a sleeping bag, but their arms are kind of up by their ears, so they feel quite cocooned, but you haven't got the worry that the swaddle might rise up sort of over their face or anything like that. Also, white noise as well I'm a massive fan of white noise. So those of you who don't know, white noise is essentially just a shh sort of noise, and it replicates the noise that babies would hear in the womb. So that's a really lovely way of settling your little one. But just a top tip, making sure that it's continuous throughout the night, rather than, because I know that some products, the white noise comes on for 20 minutes, and that's great, you're going to get your baby into a deep sleep, but then once they wake up out of the sleep cycle, which we can get to a bit later, then they're going to be searching for that white noise to get themselves back to sleep, and if it's not on continuously, then you're going to have to intervene one way or another.
That's an amazing tip. And I suppose it's kind of creating the environment that they were used to in the womb, isn't it? Because they were used to that dark and that noise, and the kind of
tight and, you know, secure.
And I guess coming out as a baby, when you've been used to being all kind of curled up and cuddled up, to then come out into this crazy bright, noisy environment where you've kind of got your arms flapping around, it's kind of intimidating, isn't it? So it's kind of, I guess, mimicking what they've been used to try and keep them comfortable.
Absolutely. And also, what you might find is some babies, well, actually all babies are born with it, but some, it affects some more than others. It's the startle reflex. I think it's called the mono reflex. I could be wrong. But, you know, when you sort of put them down, they kind of startle themselves awake because their arms are sort of jigging up and down. And that's why swaddling is a really, again, a nice way to kind of keep them cocooned and stop them from startling themselves awake.
That's a great tip. And I love the what was the name of the company you suggested?
Love to Dream.
Love to Dream. Because there's definitely that, the kind of safe sleeping aspect is really important. And for any mums that have kind of got any queries over that, there's a great website called the Lullaby Trust that can talk you through kind of safe sleeping practices, if that's something you want to look into. But
they are amazing, and I would recommend all new mums and dads to just to check them out, just to have a look at the safe sleeping, because they go into a lot of detail and it's really clearly laid out, so you can, it's quite simple to pick up on what they're trying to achieve, because safe sleeping is obviously key and critical. So
yeah, definitely. They've got some lovely little infographics, haven't they, that are just really straightforward and user friendly, which is, we like simple, especially sleep deprived.
Absolutely.
So we kind of said 6 weeks is kind of your earliest kind of to start thinking about a routine if that suits your lifestyle and that's something that you're interested in. Is there kind of a later time, Tori, where you start to think, oh dear, parents haven't got into a routine, this could make things a bit more tricky going forward, or is it kind of individual?
Not necessarily. I think that it's really important I think as mums, especially as mums, we're all sort of told, especially with our first baby, oh, you know, you better get your sleep in now because you're never going to sleep again. Sleep's going to be a distant memory, all of that kind of stuff. And I think it's really important for us to remember that sleep is like a natural process for living creatures. All living creatures need sleep, and some little ones may just need a little nudge in the right direction. So no, I don't think there's ever a wrong age to think, oh God, you know, he or she's really not sleeping, but it's too late and that's just life. That, you know, there are always steps that you can take to improve it. I do tend to see from the clients that I work with early on, the earlier you start, the sort of the less hiccups you have along the way. Because obviously with infant sleep, it's ever changing. Their sleep needs change along the way. But if you sort of set up the good sleep foundation, I hate saying good and bad, but the right sleep foundations from the start, then those hiccups probably won't be as hard as if the sleep foundations aren't there.
I love that. And I guess it's really important for parents that if they do get these like hiccups along their kind of sleep preparation journeys with their baby, that they don't feel kind of guilty or like they've done something wrong. I guess it's recognizing that this is a massive learning curve for all of you.
Absolutely. It's you know, it is massive. And also I think that there's just not the information out there. It's not that widely sort of given or received. You know, we're given a lot of information about pregnancy, about birth, about feeding, which is critical and key. But you know, feeding and sleep goes hand in hand. You know, for a newborn and for little babies, feeding is such a physical task that they need sleep to build up their energy to feed properly again. So yeah, I find it a bit frustrating when, you know, my clients said, oh well, I just assumed that this was life now, and it's like, well, it really doesn't have to be. It's just, you know, it's just got to work for you and your family dynamic.
Yeah, for sure. And it's essential for parents as well, for their recovery and their wellness, that they're also getting opportunity to sleep. So if you've got a baby that's never sleeping, then it's a whole family problem, isn't it? Quite quickly.
Definitely. Yeah, it can be very, very disruptive and crippling to everyone involved. So
yeah, I for sure know that I am not the best version of myself when I have not had enough sleep.
Well, none of us are we? Oh, you know, you can't hardly string a sentence together when you're exhausted. You know, if you've had a few glasses of wine on a Thursday night and then have to go into work on a Friday, you're never going to be sort of at your full. Obviously, you wouldn't do that as a midwife.
I'd be working the Thursday night instead of having glasses of wine.
But if you imagine that on top of, you know, you feel a bit sort of funny after a night out and not much sleep, but if you're doing that minus of drinking every night for 3-4 weeks, maybe months, of course you're not going to be able to function properly, because we need sleep to thrive and survive.
Yeah, definitely. And it's really interesting actually, Tori, because as you said, like, we give all this information out to our postnatal mums about their wound recovery and their feeding and safe sleeping, but we don't actually talk about how they're going to get their baby to sleep. We kind of just take that for granted, don't we? And then all of a sudden it becomes an issue later down the line that we've just not addressed.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I would love and maybe in the future to sort of be a part of sort of a postnatal teams giving advice to mums on sleep, and just have it included in that kind of setup, because I just think it's so important for everybody involved.
And I think mums would be very grateful for that too somehow. Is there kind of a certain amount of sleep that babies and newborns should be getting in, say, like a 24-hour period? Because obviously they don't sleep like daytime and nighttime.
No. So again, this all changes with age. So take a 6 to 12-week-old. They would ideally be having 12 hours at night, and that is obviously including the feeds that they will need, and around about 5 to 6 hours during the day. That would be the ideal. And then, you know, for a 7 to 9-month-old, they would need, again, 12 hours at night, and then sort of between 2 to 3 hours during the day. So it really sort of chops and changes as they get older. So they still need that solid 12 hours at night, but the sleep that they need during the day kind of just gets less and less as they get older.
Okay, yeah, fine. And then obviously they're waking up in the night for their feeds, but is that kind of just part of that 12 hours, because we're not assuming that's going to take...
I would say from sort of from newborn up to, I mean, every baby is different, but probably up to around 6 months, then you can pretty much guarantee that a little one is going to need to be fed. Some babies, you know, at 6 weeks are like, no, I'm fine, I'm done, I don't need feeding. And obviously if they're back up to their birth weight and there's no health issues, then that's fine during the night. But majority of children, once they have started weaning and they're on 3 full meals a day, they're weaning well, there's protein in their diet as well, obviously they're gaining the correct amount of weight and there's no underlying health issues, then from around about 6 months you can expect them to be able to go throughout the night without a feed. And also if once they weigh 12 pounds or over, then they can go 8 hours at night without a feed.
Oh, brilliant. That's a handy tip to know.
Yeah,
isn't it?
that's why some parents decide to bring in a dream feed. So a dream feed is, so you've obviously done the bath and bedtime routine, they've had a bottle or a breastfeed at 7, they're fully fed, and then just before you guys go up to bed at around sort of 10:30, 11ish at night, you would then go in, pick them up out of the cot and feed them. They would obviously still be asleep, and that works really, really well for some children, and that just sort of stretches them around to 7 a.m. in the morning. Others, you may find it disrupts their sleep cycles a little bit, and they might actually wake up a little bit more. So it's very much dependent on your little one, and it's kind of a little bit of trial and error.
Yeah, definitely. I think we're all individuals, aren't we? And as a new mum, you're getting to know your baby and what works for them, and it's never going to be kind of a one size fit all. It's a bit like, well, give it a go. If it works, great. If not, let's reevaluate. Yeah,
exactly. But I would say with anything, just give it a little bit of time. You know, if one night it doesn't work, don't just say, oh, that's not going to work for my little one, I'm going to move on. Give it sort of a good 5 to 7 days, and then reevaluate, because they do sometimes take a little bit of time to adjust.
Yeah, sure. Okay, and then I suppose if we move to maybe slightly older children, when should they kind of stop napping? When can we kind of expect that to sort of dwindle?
So it's usually between sort of 2 to 3 years. That's when they no longer need a nap. So napping, how it works is they start off around 3 months with 3 daytime naps. So there'll be a morning nap, a lunchtime nap, and a late afternoon nap. The first nap to be dropped is the late afternoon nap, and that's around about 6 to 9 months. And then the morning nap is the second one to go, and that's around about 12 to 16 months, usually sort of on the sort of 12, 13, 14 month side of things. And then the lunchtime nap, you'll see being dropped around about 2 to 3 years old. And it's, it's usually for sort of younger children around about 2 to 2.5 hours is the ideal. And then as they obviously get older and sort of heading towards 2 years, that might drop down to an hour and a half, then it might drop down to an hour, and then they might just be doing sort of 45 minutes, and then all of a sudden, well, it happens quite gradually, but they will just start to fight it, or they're just sort of waking even earlier in the morning, or completely fighting bedtime, and those could be signs that they're ready to cut that sleep out.
Sadly for us all.
Yeah, I know, my little boy cut it at the beginning of lockdown, and I was like, no,
not now.
Yeah.
He knew what was coming. He did not want to miss the news headlines.
No, I didn't want to miss Boris Johnson's updates.
I love it. And I suppose for those kind of naps, are we thinking the same kind of night mode environment that we discussed for the nighttime?
Yes, definitely. And again, I think this is where parents are kind of told mixed messaging, but we want to kind of replicate that sleep mode basically. So darkness, white noise. If they're in a sleeping bag, put them in a sleeping bag. If they're in a swaddle, put them in a swaddle. Really calming environment, and yeah, just all set up for sleep basically.
Amazing. And then if children or babies aren't getting enough sleep, what are the sort of things we can look for? I mean, I'm guessing grumpiness might be on the list, or
sort of. Well, some children you just won't, you might not see a difference, but yeah, sort of grumpy, cranky, clingy, with slightly older children, sort of more tantrumy. You might also find that they kind of, younger children especially, sort of have this like gaze look in their eye, and they kind of look off to the distance, and they can't really focus on very much. And then sort of on the opposite end, sort of slightly older children, they might just seem a bit wired, and just like really hyperactive, and so far from you thinking that they're tired, because they are literally bouncing off the wall, but they're just sort of in a hyperactive state basically, and they don't quite know what to do with themselves because they're just overtired.
I think we can all appreciate those feelings, to be fair, as adults,
yeah, exactly.
can't we?
Definitely.
And then certainly, I mean, I do this, Tori, I appreciate I'm not a newborn baby anymore, but when I'm sleep deprived, I eat my sleep. So I will eat more food because I don't really know what to do and I'm tired. Do babies kind of do the same? Will they eat more because they're sleep deprived, or are they a bit more sensible than us?
What you might find is, as I said, so babies, feeding for babies is a really sort of physical task, however they're fed, breast or bottle. So they obviously need rest to put on weight. Babies put on weight in their sleep, so that's why sleep is so key, to newborns as well as older children. But you might just find that they haven't got the energy to get a full feed, and that's sort of where cluster feeding can come in. I have had spoken to mums of newborns who say, I'm trying to get them into a 3-hour feeding schedule, but I'm really struggling, especially towards the end of the day, and sort of into the night, around sort of 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. I'm just solidly feeding, and that is really, really common, and obviously we want to encourage, especially if you're breastfeeding, encourage them to the breast as much as possible. But if you're exhausted as a mum and you're breastfeeding, you're not going to be able to get your milk supply up, because one, you're exhausted, and two, your little one's just constantly attached to you. So what I always say to my newborn clients, if they are happy to, just to give their baby something from a bottle, whether that's express milk or formula milk, and this doesn't have to be, forever if they didn't want it to be, but just to give baby, make sure baby is full, so baby can go to sleep and rest and build up some more energy to latch on again, and also just to give mum a break and again get some sleep and get her milk supply back up. So that's, again, why sleep is just so key to every aspect of life, however old you are, really.
Yeah, for sure. And to mental health as well, isn't it? Because sleep deprivation, especially in that postnatal period when your hormones are all over the place, can be just so crippling, can't it? So it is so important.
Yeah, definitely. How I sort of started this Parent Can is when I had Freddie, my eldest. He was an awful sleeper, and we went through the 4-month sleep progression, whatever you want to call it, and he was waking, I would say, every 45 minutes to an hour overnight, and I did that for about 3 weeks, and and it got to the point where I was in a traffic jam, and I was trying to move lanes. He was screaming in the car, and I actually went into the back of someone, like a teeny tiny prang. It wasn't everything, you know, too serious, but that was it then. I was like, enough, I need to get this sorted, because I can't continue like this. He can't continue like this. And yeah, so I completely sympathise with any parent who is being affected by sleep deprivation, because it is, as you say, crippling to every, like, you know, mental health, physical health, every aspect.
Yeah, for sure. So what the 4-month sleep regression, Tori, what does that kind of involve? I know it's extensive, but kind of a summary.
Yeah. So in summary, basically, you know, at 4 months, there's a lot going on developmentally for a little one. Also, you know, teething comes into play around then as well. But at 4 months, their baby sleep pattern changes. So it starts to develop, it starts to mature, and they get really familiar with how they're falling to sleep, basically. So if they are being fed to sleep, if they're being rocked to sleep, if they're being held to sleep, or if you're co-sleeping, and then you put them down and they're asleep, fine. And then what they will do is they'll go through one sleep cycle. So a sleep cycle is, we all do it as humans. It involves a cycle of deep sleep, a cycle of light sleep, and then a transitional period. So during that transitional period as adults, this is when we might wake up and have a drink, we might wake up and go to the loo, we might wake up and not remember it at all and just go straight back into another sleep cycle. But what some babies can't do is they can't link those sleep cycles. So at 4 months, they obviously become very aware of how they're being put to sleep. So for Freddie, he was being fed to sleep. So every 45 minutes to an hour, he was waking, because he needed to be fed to sleep to get himself back to sleep. So that's sort of what happens in a nutshell. There's a lot more science to it at around 4 months. And that's why, you know, everyone sort of dreads it, because it's a change for life. It's not going to, you know, it's not going to revert back to normal. It's sort of there for good.
Okay, so for Freddie, it was, the trigger for him was feeding, which is obviously a massive tie to you, because if you're breastfeeding, you're the only one that can do that, which is really tricky.
Yeah.
So is there ways of triggering other things to be their kind of sleep trigger as opposed to feeding?
Definitely. And those things I've mentioned before. So white noise is brilliant if it's continuous. And say if they had a dummy, and dummies get a bit of a bad rep, but they're really good if you've got a slightly reflux baby, or a baby who just likes to suck. But again, around 4 months, what you might find is when the dummy falls out, because it usually does in their sleep, they try and reach, they can't reach for it and put it back in. So you're having to go in every sleep cycle, put the dummy back in. I think the Lullaby Trust recommend around 6 months you can introduce a comforter, so a comforter is kind of, it's like a muslin cloth with like a little animal on it. Just make sure that there's no like buttons or long fur that they can sort of get stuck in the back of their throats, and that can be a really good way to sort of remove the dummy as a sleep association, or you, because, you know, it's just something that they can sort of hold on to, they can suck. What I say to my clients is, you sleep with it for the first couple of nights. Breastfeeding mums, chuck it down your bra, you know, make it smell of you, so they're going to find comfort in it.
Yeah, that's a brilliant tip, isn't it? So they feel like you're there, but you're not. You're
asleep,
which is great.
Absolutely.
I love it. And I suppose through kind of, if you're having trouble with your baby sleeping at night, are there kind of things you can do throughout the course of the day that might help to improve that later on?
Yeah, I mean, so sleep, breathe, sleep. So making sure that your little one is having the correct amount of daytime sleep for their age is going to play a massive part in nighttime sleep. Because if they're overtired, overstimulated, they're going to be really hard to settle. So, for example, at 6 months, say if they're waking up at 7, they would go down for their morning nap around 9:15, and you're aiming that to be around an hour. And then they would have their lunchtime nap around 12:15, and that would be around about 2 to 2.5 hours. And then they would have their late afternoon sleep at around 4:30, probably for about 20-30 minutes. And at that age, the late afternoon sleep will be the toughest to get out of them, because they're kind of going through a nap transition. Yeah, sleep, re-sleep, and nailing the daytime naps is key to bedtime sleep, basically.
That's really good to know, because I think sometimes you think, oh, if he's not going to sleep at night, then it must be that we're oversleeping in the day. But actually, like you said, if sleep's breeding sleep, then actually it's really important you get those fundamental sleeps in during the day, rather than skipping them.
Exactly. And I don't think that I have spoken to a client yet whose little one is having problems at night because they're having too much sleep during the day. Usually it's too little. So
amazing. That's definitely a good tip. So I imagine there's probably lots of parents out there thinking the opposite, because that's how we would treat ourselves, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
And then I know one of the other very common issues that parents can have around sleep is getting a child to sleep in their own bed. So are there any tips or things in your experience that have helped to combat that?
So for sort of tiny babies, so for sort of 6 weeks plus, it is really common for them to want to sleep on us. So again, what I always recommend to my clients is, do the swaddle, create that really sort of like wombly, homely feel to them, basically. Also sleeping with the mattress cover, obviously not with the baby in it, but again, so it smells like you. If you're a breastfeeding mum, spraying a little bit of breast milk on sort of where the area that they're sleeping, and for younger babies, making sure that they're excuse me, fully fed and fully winded, because they will not sleep without those two things being done. And for older ones, it's just being consistent, and pushing them down in their cot awake, and leaving the room. And also, it's really important to remember that little ones do tend to cry themselves to sleep. And I'm not talking about screaming, I'm just talking about having a bit of a wail here and there, sort of having a bit of a cry up, and then they'll go quiet for a bit and kind of grumble a little bit, and then and it might be on and off for sort of 5-10 minutes, and that is purely just them trying to get themselves off to sleep. It's basically, if you've had a really stressful day and you get into bed and you turn to your partner and you have a bit of a chat about how awful your boss is, and then you kind of instantly feel better and you kind of go to sleep. Basically, babies are just trying to de-stress from the day, have a bit of a chat, have a bit of a moan, and then they're kind of drift off. And as parents, we're told that if your little one is crying, then you need to go to them straight away. But I always say, just wait and just listen and just see, is that crying asking for you, or is that crying just half-hearted and they're just trying to settle themselves?
Yeah, that's a good tip. Maybe have a little seat outside the door so you don't feel like you've walked away, but you're just there, just in case.
And then with toddlers, again, be consistent, set those clear boundaries, and be firm but fair. And they can negotiate themselves out of anything, toddlers. So just set those really, really clear boundaries and stick to them, and they will soon sort of realise who's in charge.
They're much cleverer than we think, aren't they?
Honestly.
They're definitely the boss in the household.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. Is that so for some parents, Tori, that are super lucky and have got access to someone like yourself with the sleep consultant qualifications? For those who haven't got that access, is there any kind of resources and things that you would point parents in the direction of?
I'm going to do a shameless plug here.
Fine, go for it.
I have to look at my Instagram account, because I do try and give as much free content as I possibly can. I do free downloads of how much sleep a little one should have at a certain age. I talk about awake windows, excuse me, and so I've got a free download of awake windows as well. And awake windows, for those of you who don't know, is basically how long your little one should be awake for until they go down for their next sleep. And I find using these better than watching out for sleep cues. So for example, a 5-month-old awake window would be 2 hours. So if they wake up at 7, they need to go down at 9 for their morning sleep. And then a 9-month-old, it's between sort of 2.5 to 3.5 hours. So it chops and changes quite sort of drastically as they get older. Another book that I love and worked really well for me was My Baby Week by Week. I don't know if you've heard of that one, but that gives quite a clear breakdown of eating and sleeping and sort of how to gently get them into quite a good little sleeping routine. But yeah, there are loads of books out there, and there's a lot of conflicting information, and I think it's just sort of finding something that works for you and your family dynamic.
Yeah, definitely. It's really interesting what you say about the conflicting information, because I think that's really common amongst lots of healthcare advice, especially when it comes to pregnancy, postpartum and newborn care. So use social media because, like Tori said, it's amazing platform, but be a little bit wary. Make sure that the information you're accessing from a certain page is from someone with proper credentials, and don't be afraid to message that person and just say, like, what are your qualifications? What is your experience? Because someone who is fit to give you the information will be more than happy to share that.
Yeah. And also having a look on Google and making sure that they've got some like Google reviews and things like that. And as you say, just making sure, you message them and ask the questions, and also asking if they're insured as well. Because you won't be able to get insurance if you haven't got qualifications. So
brilliant. And Tori's Facebook page, Instagram page, will be linked in the bio for the podcast. So absolutely check that out, because she has got some amazing free resources. And I know you're always welcome to, always up for chatting through things with parents to kind of help them on this sleep venture, because it is just so fundamental, isn't it?
Yeah. And it is a bit of a minefield, once you sort of think you've cracked one stage and they change to another. And yeah, as I said, there's so much conflicting information out there, and it can be really daunting and overwhelming. And I like to pride myself on kind of cutting through all of that and making it as clear, as concise, as straightforward, and as user friendly as possible.
And I guess the more simple it is, the easier it is to be consistent, because if you're constantly flitting between different things, then your child is just as confused as you are, really.
Yeah. And with anything, as I said, it does take a little bit of time, and consistency is key, and it's critical, because if something is not consistent, then they're just going to get confused. And you think it's one way one day and another way the next, and not kind of really know where they stand.
Yeah, definitely. And Tori, I wonder, just in regards with your experience, do you find that parents tend to come to you as a couple, or does it tend to be one over the other? Because I just wonder whether, if you've got two, I guess, maybe slightly clashing techniques over sleep, whether that can sometimes cause a little bit of difficulty, and how we can kind of overcome that.
Yeah, so it tends to be mums who come to me, and I think that's just usually because it's, mums are usually on maternity leave. And it is quite funny that I speak to the clients like, oh, I'll go and check with my husband, but I already know what he's going to say, and I was like, well, you tell him to do a week of what you're doing, and then see what he says. But I think it's so important for both parents to be on the same page, because if mum's doing it one way, dad's doing it the other, it's just not going to work. So that's why I with me, I would write down everything that we've spoken about, provide like a bespoke plan, a bespoke routine, and a sleep coaching method that the whole family is happy with, so they both have something to refer to. Because there's just no point in trying to make changes if it's going to be conflicting.
Yeah, definitely. That's a really good idea, because that way you're kind of building something that's individualized for that family.
Yeah,
And we know every family is different. People finish
exactly.
work at different times. So the
Yeah,
fact that you can give that kind of bespoke plan is amazing, isn't it?
yeah, yeah.
That's a really great service. We are all very grateful for people out there like you, Tori, able to fix this. with that teamwork.
Yeah.
So for kind of everyone that comes on my podcast, Tori, I always ask for 5 top tips. So what would be your kind of 5 top tips for new parents that kind of want to try and avoid any sleep issues as their baby grows up? I know you could probably give way more than 5, but
um, so I would say, first of all, creating a really good feeding routine and feeding schedule, and that can take a little bit of time. And I think, you know, there's a lot of stigma around, well, if your baby's breastfed, then they won't sleep. I can tell you now, hand on heart, whether your baby is breastfed or formula fed or however way they are fed, they are capable of sleeping. So please, any mums out there, please do not think that if you're breastfeeding that they won't sleep, because that is just not the case. Setting up a really safe and sleep promoting sleep environment is just key, and that's sort of everything that we've talked about. So darkness, white noise, obviously making sure that it's not too hot and not too cold. I think the Lullaby Trust say that the best temperature is around about 19 degrees, and, you know, using a swaddle or a sleeping bag, whatever your preference is, and just just making sure that they kind of know that this environment is set up for sleep. I think number 2 would be creating a really good bath and bedtime routine, because, you know, that's kind of the first step to the routine that you want to do. And, you know, as I said, it's bath time, calming but fun, drying them, a little bit of massage, getting them into their sort of temperature appropriate pajamas, giving them a really good feed, winding them, putting them in their sleeping bag or swaddle, and then I always say, read them a little story. It doesn't have to be the complete works of Shakespeare, but just babies and, you know, all children love to hear the sound of their parents' voice. It's very calming, it's very soothing for them, and then I like to sing them a little song, so usually Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, and then saying a sort of bedtime sentence. So, you know, it's bedtime now, Mummy and Daddy love you, give them a kiss and pop them down. And just doing that kind of from the get-go, they will start to really recognise that those signs are building up for sleep and for nighttime. And it's the same with nap times as well. So obviously you're not going to do the bath or the pajamas, but having that sort of nighttime routine all set up, putting them in their sleeping or swaddle bag, you know, reading them a little story, singing the song, saying the sleep time sentence and pushing them down. And again, they will just start to recognise this routine, and start to understand that, you know, after this has happened, it's time for bed. What number 3 I think I'm on would be
all right, I'm not good at counting.
I could talk about this all day, so you might have to stop me. Number 3 would be understanding awake windows, and as I said, the time in between naps and things, because sometimes and most of the time, getting the awake windows right means that you're going to be promoting sleep, and your baby is not going to be overtired, so they should settle quicker. And that's obviously what we're aiming for. Number 4 would be getting the daytime naps right. As I said, sleep we sleep. Having the right daytime naps for the right age will help you so much with bedtime and nighttime sleep. So sort of smashing those is absolutely key. And then finally, just being consistent and concise, and you know, we're sort of creatures of habit, aren't we? So the more that our bodies do things at the same time every day, they kind of prepare for it and they get better at it. So, you know, if your baby's being fed at the same time every day, their body's going to start to expect it, they're going to start getting ready for it, and they're going to sort of process that better. And it's the same with sleep as well. There's, you know, if you go to sleep at the same time, you know, it's like for us, if we go to the bed at the same time every night and wake up in the morning at the same time, you know, it works, our body seems to work a lot better. and it's the same with children, and also waking them up at the same time every day, however rough the night has been. So if you're going for a 7 till 7 routine, then waking them up at 7, lights on, curtains up, good morning, again, you're kickstarting that body clock, and you can kind of set the day up how you mean to go on then.
That's a really good, brilliant tip actually, Tori, because I can imagine if you have had a really rough night, then the temptation is they've finally gone to sleep, albeit 6:15, but actually sticking to that routine and that consistency is obviously really, really important to getting success for the consecutive nights.
Exactly.
And the other thing, Tori, that I know parents quite often resort to is things like taking the baby in the car or walking with a pram, and that kind of movement to try and initiate sleep. Is that kind of something that tends to work, or does it cause more complications longer term?
So again, if and again, not all babies are the same, but if your little one is used to falling, being driven to sleep basically, and then all of a sudden the next thing they know, they're waking up and they're in their cot, obviously it's going to be confusing for them. It's almost like us falling asleep in our bed and waking up in the swimming pool. You're going to be a bit like, what, where am I, what's going on? So if you're looking to set up a routine, and you're looking to sort of get them to nap in their cot, and that's where you want them to be, then doing those naps and things in the cot is going to be the best place for it. But saying that, obviously flexibility is key to our lives. So if you're looking to set up a routine, I would set aside 10 days to 2 weeks of absolutely smashing it at home, just being really consistent with your timings, consistent with your approach. And then once they're napping like a champion and sleeping like a champion at night, then of course you can be a little bit more flexible. And if you're driving down to see granny and grandpa, then trying to leave for a nap time, so that they will sleep in the car, is a good one. If you're going out to lunch with your NCT friends, but they're usually asleep by 12, putting them down in their buggy at 12 o'clock at the same time, trying to replicate that sleep environment. So using a snooze shade to make it dark, maybe using your phone for white noise. And yes, there might be a bit of rocking with the pram, but if you've got a really good routine set up, then it's not going to cause too much of an issue if it's just sort of here and there. And also, if daytime naps have been awful and not as good as they usually are, just bring bedtime forward, just an earlier bedtime. If my little ones haven't, we've been out and about and they haven't slept very well, and they're usually asleep by 7, and they've had an hour's sleep rather than 3, I would just put them down at 6. And it doesn't cause them to wake up any earlier. It just makes sure that they're not going down overtired.
So you'd still wake them up at 7 in the morning, but you're just putting them to bed that little bit to make up for that sleep in the day. That's brilliant, because so many mums will take their baby for a drive out of desperation, and then you're in a position where you've got home, you're sat on the driveway and you dare move the baby.
Turn the engine off.
So you're then like sat on your driveway like a prisoner for the next 2 hours.
What do I do? And I just think it's really important, as I can remember with Freddie being like, I am the only one who's going through this. I'm the only one who's, pulling my hair out at 3 a.m. because I don't know what to do. But I'm not, and you as parents are not. Like, everyone goes through this, and everyone, thinks they're alone, but you're definitely not. And always just speak about it. Seek support if you want to seek support. Asking for help is definitely not a sign for weakness. And yeah, we're all in the same boat, us parents together. So,
and that's another way social media can be super amazing, because it can make you realize actually everyone out there is kind of struggling, but it can also be that awful source of comparison when someone puts up that picture of their beautifully sleeping baby that slept all night, and they've got a full face of makeup and you're tearing your hair out. So sometimes
but you don't know what's going on, behind the scenes. That photo could be well cropped. That is just like a 10-second snapshot of their day. And I think I have to remind myself of that sometimes, because I'm like, how do these people have their, you know, their stuff together, and I'm here with like a naked toddler and the teething, screaming 1-year-old, trying to leave the house. So yeah, we're all in it together.
Absolutely. And yeah, so yeah, don't compare. If your baby's not sleeping, it's not a sign of your parenting ability at all. It's just one of those wonderful little bumps in the road to being a mother.
Exactly.
I love it. So as I said, I will link Tori's Instagram page into the bio, because there is some really amazing free resources, and I know you're updating that really regularly. So if you've got any more questions about infant sleep, please message Tori, not me, because she'll be significantly more helpful than I will be.
I love it when people come and say hello. So yeah.
Amazing. And thank you so much for joining me this evening as well, Tori. It's been brilliant to chat. And I'm sure over the upcoming years, I'll have more questions that I can hit you up with as well.
It's been lovely. Thank you so much, Pip. It's been brilliant. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for joining me. You take care.
And you take care. Bye.
Bye.